Hey everybody, Steve Billman here. Thanks for joining me. Hey, today we're going to continue our video series, Harmony for Songwriters, and this is video 9. Today we're going to cover a really exciting topic, and that topic is called modulation. So modulation is simply taking a progression and taking it from one key to another. So if we start in the key of G major, then at the end of it, perhaps we're going to go to the key of A major. So it just simply means we're going to modulate to another key. All right. And that key is determined by you. It could be up, it could be down, it could be different places. There are some more common modulations that we'll talk about, but really anything is fair game with the modulation. Okay, so there are two types of modulations that we're going to deal with in this video. The first is called direct modulation. And that just basically means that there's no preparation for the modulation. You're just going to go from whatever key you're in, immediately you just go to another key. And this is a more shocking sort of modulation, if you will. And a lot of people use it at the end of a tune, let's say, for the taking the chorus out. The last time they do the chorus, they'll maybe modulate up a whole step, and that'll bring energy and it'll bring power to the final chorus. It's a very common way to do that. Um, Remember that all this stuff that we're talking about has emotion to it. It brings emotion to people as they listen to it. And when you modulate up, say from G major to A flat major or A major, it's going to bring sort of a surge of energy, if you will, to the music. And again, part of what we're doing as songwriters is learning to manipulate that in a good way uh, in our songs so that this will affect the listener in certain ways we want them to feel. So this kind of concept, this direct modulation, is going to bring like a surge of energy and sort of a freshness to the chorus that we've already heard. The other one is called pivotal modulation, and it's a little bit more subtle. It's still changing keys, so it's going to be still going to be a little bit shocking, but it's going to be a little bit more subtle. So with pivotal modulation, what we're going to do is find a common chord between whatever keys we're going to. So, uh, well, I'll explain what it is in a second. But basically, you're finding a common chord in both keys. Okay. And then that chord is your pivot chord to go in and out of each one of those specific keys. Now, to use the pivot chord, it's essential to have keys that are within the same number of sharps or flats. If you go extreme, like from C major to C sharp major, there's no common chords between those two keys. So it has to be a key that's somewhat within one or two sharps or flats of each other. Okay. And I'll explain exactly how that's going to work in a second. All right. So let's deal with the direct modulation first. Again, there's different ways of using this in the song, but most of the time, like I said before, a lot of, or at least a lot of times, people will use it at the end of the song. We've already heard the chorus in one key, and we take that and we modulate it up to a new key and sing the chorus one more time, and it brings energy to it. So, for instance, if I take the progression of, let's just say, G major to E minor to C major. So I'm in the key of G. It's a 1 chord, going to a 6 chord, going to a 4 chord. 1, 6, 4. One more time. 1, 6. If I take that up a whole step now, watch what happens. 1, 6, 4. 1, 6, and then I ride the chorus out in that key. So that would be an example. Finish this. So that would be an example of direct modulation. I'm going directly from the key of G major, right? And And I'm taking the same progression in the chorus, but I'm raising it up a whole step to go into the key of A major. That lifts the chorus, that lifts the song for the ending, builds more energy to it. Now, you could also go up a half step. Between G major and A major, there's a difference of 2 sharps. So G major has 1 sharp, A major has 3 sharps. Okay, so it's a little shocking, but you know, again, there's not much difference in those keys. We're not using a pivot chord, but still, it's not quite as shocking. But if I went up a half step to A flat, watch what happens. Here we go, A flat major. Right? It's a little bit more, at least to me, it's a little bit more shocking. I'm going from a key that has 1 sharp to A flat, which is a key that has 4 flats. So this is where your creativity and your taste come in. All of those, or both of those, are possible, but what works for you, and what emotion are you trying to create in the listener? This is the great thing about these things we're learning. They're just tools, but it's up to us to take those tools and make it creative and make it musical. Okay, so that's an example of a direct modulation. There's other examples I could give you, but that's just a basic example of direct modulation. So let's talk now about pivotal modulation. So I'm going to use the same progression. This is from a song I wrote called I Will See You. And the chorus is basically this, what I just played, G major, E minor, 7, C. So it's a 1, 6, and then 4. And that happens 3 times. And then what happens is we're going to go to the bridge. And on the bridge, we're going to go to the key of F major. We're going to start on the 4 chord, but we're going to the key of F major. So what I did was I used that C chord as a pivot chord. So in the key of G, right, it's the 4 chord. And if I look at the key of F, if I go up 5 steps, I land on the 5th step of the scale is C. And we know in major key, the 5th chord is major. So that C major is related to the key of F as well. The only difference is that it's a 5 chord in the key of F, and it's a 4 chord in the key of C. Or sorry, 4 chord in the key of G, right? So that's my pivot chord. That's the chord I'm going to use to go into the key of F. And then when I come out of the bridge, I'm going to use that same C chord to bring me back into the key of G major again. All right? So with the chorus, the last chord is C. When I go to the bridge, that C chord is the 4 chord in the key of G. Now it's going to become the 5 chord in the key of F. So the bridge is chord progression goes to B flat, it's a 4 chord, and then it goes to D minor, which is 6, to the 5 chord, C major. Now it's the 5 chord. And then it goes to the 2 chord. Then it goes to the 1 chord, which is F. And then C is the 5 chord. Remember, we're in the key of F now. Then it goes to the 4 chord again, B flat major, 6 chord, D minor, 3 chord, A minor 7, B flat, 4 chord, and then C. Now, that C chord in the key of F is the 5 chord, but now we're going to go back to G, so it's also the 4 chord in the new key. So you can see that pivot chord is representing the 5 chord in the 1 key, in the key of F, and it's representing the 4 chord in the key of G. It's a common chord. And it's helping us to bridge between those 2 keys. Okay? All right, so here's what it sounds like. So this is the chorus, G major, 1, 6, 4. One more time. 1, 6, 4. I hang on the C for one more measure. 1, 2. Now that C becomes 5. Here's the 4 chord. 6, 5, 2, sorry. And 1, 5, 4, 6, 3, 4 chord. that 5 chord is 4 here. G major, back to G major. And you can feel that lift as we go to G major, right? So that C chord is playing 2 roles. It's playing the role of a 5 chord in the key of F, and it's playing the role of a 4 chord in the key of G. That's what I mean by a pivot chord. This is a little harder to create. It takes a little bit more thinking, whereas direct modulation, you're just going from one key directly to another. But this pivot chord concept is really nice way to kind of ease into a new key, especially if you're going to ease into it in one section and then ease back into the original key in another section. It works really well. All right? Okay, so to understand, what I want you to understand in this video is the concept of direct modulation, going directly from one key to another, and then the concept of the pivotal modulation, kind of finding that common chord between the 2 keys and using that to go in and to go out of each chord. Okay, so the last thing I want to say is I just want to talk a little bit about some artists that have influenced me with modulation, and they use it very well. One of those artists is Brian Wilson, and he uses it throughout his catalog of music in some really amazing ways, sometimes going through keys that you can't even imagine would relate to one another. Especially in his later work, he did some amazing things with modulation. But the one tune that comes to mind that I had never thought about before, because I never looked at the chart, I just heard it. But once I looked at the chart, it amazed me, and that tune is Good Vibrations. He uses modulation in a really, really powerful way and slick way on that recording, so I encourage you to check that out. A group that I would encourage you to check out, and I'm going to say this more than once, are the Beatles. They use modulation in really powerful ways, and they used it quite a bit, actually. I was surprised as I was studying their chord progressions and their music, how often they used it. So I would encourage you to discover their music and look at their music. Also the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees were great songwriters, and they used modulation in some pretty cool ways. And the amazing thing about them is they had so many hits and they wrote so many pop tunes, and yet their harmony was pretty cool. I mean, it was pretty sophisticated harmony, and they did use modulation in a great way. The other group that I'm going to be specific with them, it was a group called Lone Star. They had a hit, probably the 90s, I think, or maybe early 2000, with a tune called Amazed. And that tune really amazed me, no pun intended, because the way they used modulation was actually in the structure of the song. So it wasn't at the end of the tune where they just, rose to another key for the chorus. It wasn't even necessarily just a pivot chord from one section to another. They went back to the original key. This is part of the form. They had 3 modulations within it. So on the verse, they were in one key. In the pre-chorus, they modulated to another key. And on the chorus, they were in a 3rd key. And so it's pretty powerful when you hear this in this song, because it's tricky. When they get to the chorus, they're in a completely different key than they were when they started, because they've already had 1 modulation, then 2 by the time they're in the chorus. Then they have to get from the chorus back to the verse. So again, that takes some skill to do that. So that's another approach to using modulation, is like every section actually of your song is modulated to another key. I would encourage you to check out that song, look at the sheet music, and listen to the recording, and sort of figure out which keys they're going from and to. It's pretty amazing, actually. And just as a side note, you guys, I would encourage you to study the music of the great writers. Now, I'm coming from older school. For me, it's certain bands and certain people. For you, maybe you're younger, you want to check out, younger writers. That's perfectly fine. But these suggestions I'm making to you, these were great writers. I would encourage you at least to check them out. You don't even necessarily have to like the style or the music, but just check them out to to see how they use these concepts that we're talking about in harmony. And those artists I mentioned, I would listen to their songs with the music in front of you and look at the harmony and see exactly what they're doing. And then take that and then try to apply that to your own songs. Okay? That's what we do. If we want to be great songwriters, we attach ourselves to people that are great songwriters and we analyze what they do and we apply it to our music. That's how we become better. All right? Okay, you guys, thank you for listening, for checking out the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.